Ladies and gentlemen, hello. It is Wednesday. I'm gonna square myself up here real quick. All right. I am Jared Kubika Miller, debate coach, professor of communications. We have Matt Shapiro, Esquire, back.
Hello.
He's back.
I'm back.
We got Tim Stevie from the San Diego State University and Visolutions.
Woo!
And Pro Communications.
Yeah. All right. So, I want to start with I've entered mullet territory.
I think I have too. It's been a while. I used to not cut my hair on purpose, and now I'm doing it involuntarily. Is the word, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, I could put a little itty bitty ponytail in the back and just tuck it away, but I think that would I'm not running away from this party here.
When your kids will run by, cut it off.
Leonard Skinner t-shirt. I think the mullet goes with it well.
Yeah. All right. Oh man.
You know what? I want to just jump in here, Jared, if you don't mind, and I want to say, I wanted to talk about what we're talking about today, the flipped class model and what that really means. And I kind of wanted to set up, Jared, what do you my theme for the day, I kind of wanted to say it in the beginning is we are basically using a textbook approach. Literally a textbook approach. Is a teacher ever nervous about sending a student into a textbook to learn, to come to class and discuss what they learned? The answer, I believe, is no. That's why we have textbooks. So, Jared, coming from that perspective, I mean, maybe explain what you mean by flipped class model. Let's just start with the definition.
Well, okay, so I guess the thing is I've been using this approach for years, but I did not invent it, okay, by no means. I started off by just wanting to have more debates because I just think that people learn more from doing the debate, and there's just so many different things that can happen. Everyone learns a different lesson. And the more sort of full debates you have, win or lose, doesn't matter. The more debates that you have, translates into knowledge. That experience translates into knowledge.
Practical knowledge.
Yeah. But I also believe that, just straight up lecture material and telling people the lessons that you've learned through your experience is also really helpful. And so seriously, 7 years ago, my idea in order to have more debates was to haul a bunch of video cameras into the classroom and then split people up, and then they record them. And I just took it upon myself. I just considered that to be a grading assignment that I'm giving myself to go home and watch the debates, right? And so that was the very beginning of the flipped class. And I started realizing, well, wait, if I'm going home to watch videos, maybe they could go home and watch my lectures. You know what I mean? And so I started looking that up. I'm I wonder if anyone else is doing this, because I want to make sure, what I'm doing in the classroom has some basis.
Efficiency.
In literature. Yeah. Well, no, just based in literature. I've been trained in debate. I research stuff before I actually do anything. I don't implement anything just because it feels like it might work. You know what I mean? It's kind of I want to see if anybody else did it. Yeah. People were looking up the flipped class, and they were just talking about how, you use class time for work, and then at home they're doing what would typically be lecture material. And lo and behold, we have video technology has just taken off in the last 10 years. It's everywhere. There's so many more people have access to watch videos now than they ever have. You know what I mean?
I wanted to kind of just describe exactly, practically what we're talking about. In Jared's, we have coursework in DebateSensei where students go home and their homework will be to watch videos which explain or educate them on the theories or concepts in argumentation and debate or in public speaking. Much like, in my opinion, or in objective fact, like a textbook. You give a student a textbook, they go home and they read some author's opinion on how to carry something out, and really we're kind of talking about how much the teacher agrees with that philosophy or whatever, you know. So
Yeah.
you go learn at home, and you come to class prepared to hopefully kind of speed up any sort of education on what the concept actually is, and you spend more time doing debates, doing what you learn in the allocated class time. For instance, in a conventional class when we're all back in school. That translates also to online, but you know, that's kind of the basic premise, right, Jared, of a flipped class when we talk about and why it works so well with debate and argumentation or public speaking classes. Yeah.
So,
Basically.
So Matt, how many actual debates or speeches did you give in your public speaking or argumentation classes? If they weren't Jared's, not Jared's, how many did you give in your public speaking or in debate classes in the course of the semester?
Disclosure here, it's been a while since I've been in some classes. I apologize, but I'm getting older now. But I do remember doing, I think, 2 debates, not including a final debate. In Jared's class specifically, I took argumentation at Cal State Fullerton as well. And I remember we spoke, I think, almost every day, not necessarily doing a debate, but, you know, that class was very kind of public speaking oriented. Definitely just get up and say your name. And teachers do all kinds of things in argumentation classes. I think that's kind of such a cool part of the field is there's a lot of respect and authority given to this individual teacher to kind of teach whatever they want, right? I mean, Jared, do you find that to kind of almost be more unique?
Well, no, where were you going with that, Tim? About how many?
No, I'm getting it. Like, how many times did you get to practice the thing that you were paying thousands of dollars a semester to do? Right?
Not that many.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
I think back on my like public speaking classes, and I got a handful of speeches, and like in argumentation, like a couple of debates, because just realistically, the entire class can only watch, like the professor can only evaluate like one team at a time, one speaker at a time. So just logistically, between all of their lectures and like teaching the fundamentals and core things, it's not physically possible to have that many students in the front of the room being evaluated for the debates, like more than, you know, a couple times a semester. And I felt like that was a little bit cheated. Like,
it's logistics.
Yeah,
like,
and
I understand the professors are doing their very best, but it's just not possible to have more debates. And I think that's what Jared was saying. Like, that was one of your motivators. Post a DebateSensei, post a flipped classroom approach where there is not lecture taking up class time, instead there's debates taking up class time.
Let's focus on lecture in class time. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. How many debates, given that lectures done at home, how many debates do you now get into an argumentation class? It used to be 3.
Versus all those years back when I was in your class. 10 years ago.
So now they get at least 6 full debates, and there's still other speaking assignments on top of that.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's just a lot more doing, right? Like that seems to make a lot of sense. You learn by doing stuff.
But like I give them like and they do at least 2 different types of debate as well. So like they'll do IPDA, like a limited preparation type, and they do a research type. You know what I mean? They do NFALD for the people who know, and they do IPDA. They do like 4 IPDA, and they do 2 NFALD rounds. And so now they get kind of a survey of debates. You see how it compares.
How do those translate? How many of those? Okay, I realize we're in kind of Corona land, but in a conventional classroom, of those 6 debates now, how many are they doing in class in front of everyone, and how many are they doing remotely where everyone gets to have access to their videos, basically?
So there's 4 that are happening during class time. Now, one of them's asynchronous, so they do it one speech at a time and then compile it and respond to it and everything like that. But still, I give them class time to do that. You know what I mean? And the beauty about the asynchronous debate in a flipped class is that they could work in groups. And now instead of getting up and speaking in front of their opponent, they're getting up and speaking in front of their teammates. You know what I mean? And so, like, they get like
explain, Jared. I mean, what you're saying is, because I want to be real clear, just for anyone who kind of is maybe not following up with exactly what we're saying. Like, in an asynchronous debate in class, that means that everyone is going to give their first affirmative on the same day. Is that right, Jared?
That's right. They come into class, and everyone has been researching the same case. So they're all familiar with the evidence. They have different, slightly modified, affirmatives. The people that are really lost, they can sort of lean on the
piggyback.
Yeah, you know what I mean. It's kind of like they get some peer coaching from people that have the exact same assignment as them, and now it's like maybe their nerves show through in their speech, but at least they have evidence. Whereas before, there was just people that they just wouldn't show up.
Yeah,
they just wouldn't show up because they weren't ready to go. And I'm like, man, how do I reach those people?
This puts basically everyone, even though these same students will be paired against each other on a different day, on this day, they're all kind of, at least seemingly, it seems like they're on the same side and kind of rooting for each other and pushing the same ideas on the same day. And it kind of cuts through some of the adversarial stuff that we get in the conventional, synchronous, everything happens that day event. Go ahead, Jared.
So I saw this flipped class model, and it seems like a lot of the innovation in teaching comes from the math and sciences a lot. Like the Khan Academy was very much like a math approach, and I think this was also a math and or science. So it started off in that field of study. But when I was looking at what they were proposing, which was a plan to work during class time and plan to, listen or read or something at home. That seemed uniquely suited for, communication, because everyone has already put aside this meeting time. And that meeting time is so much better to use it with the other students than
even collaborating on a case. I mean, even making time for that time, right? Like,
so you don't have to schedule that time outside of class.
Yeah, it's impossible right now. I mean,
something I've never asked actually that I'm interested. I know an issue that so many communication professors face is emails, like questions they get from their students that are like working on their speech at home, doing it entirely separate. Like their work time is spent on their own. And there's so many new questions that bubble up that they just fire off a ton of emails to their professors. When you get all that work time done in class, when you are available to answer things live, have you noticed a difference in the amount of emails that you get from students pre and post flipping the classroom?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my public speaking class, I have roundtable discussions, and every single student has to explain their topic, what the organization is going to be, and I give them feedback and direction, right? It's that happens during class time.
Oh, wow.
And that's right before their major speeches come up. They, I'm walking them through choosing a topic. And at this point, it's kind of that's when I usually get people freaking out. And now, I get a lot less of that because now all of your discussions can be topical. Rather than the same lectures every year, it's
or application more than theory, right?
Right. I mean,
I'd rather tell you how this is a counterplan than explain a counterplan first, and then try to explain secondarily how this applies to whatever you're trying to do.
Right. But instead of saying this is what a counterplan is, it's kind of all right, this is our topic. So remember the counterplan lecture? Here's how you use it.
Yeah, exactly. And so we provide, DebateSensei through Proto Communications provides a set of coursework. I'm sure there's a bunch of people out there providing coursework, but the advantage is by using video lessons and quizzes, students can watch the same counterplan video 5 times, right? Whereas there's even advantages to where they may have to catch something in class if you're exclusively lecturing, if they aren't taking diligent notes, they're texting their friend. Gosh knows why someone is distracted. Yeah, they're hungover. We have some middle schoolers watching. You don't know what that means, but that's okay. Someday, don't be hungover. But you'll never be distracted, and you'll get every note. But if you
does that mean that you were drunk?
There are advantages.
No, that means I was drunk yesterday.
Yeah,
that's what that means.
Long story short. Hopefully the idea is people are willing to watch a video. If they're confused, they'll watch it again, and you will hopefully get less questions, or at least less, it's all harder questions, more about, what they're trying to do specifically, more so than just hopefully having to understand the basic fundamental tenets, which we've all explained 1,000 times. So that's kind of the function, I think, of the flipped class model. And like on top of that, we're talking a lot about incorporating more debates into your class. We also, I don't know if we want to dive into this. I realize this is the DebateSensei podcast, but Jared, would you like to speak at all? We have public speaking options as well. Do you want to speak to those at all for a second?
Like, I mean, a little bit. I already did, kind of. You know what I mean? But as far as like why it's uniquely suited for debates, it also kind of opened up the judging component of argumentation and debate, which I never saw, right? Which was like, because before, when you didn't have a flipped class model, you always operated as the judge. But now when you're like, I want more and more debates, you're like, oh, let's make sure that the students understand the judge. It's like, oh man, they need to have some content to help them understand how to be a judge. You know what I mean? And I don't see that a whole lot in.
Tim, I have a question for you. Like, in your experience, how important is it to see? How much did you learn from watching other people versus, reading from the book or doing it yourself?
I learned most everything about debate, or like forensics as a whole, right? But particularly about debate, from going to tournaments. And there's like this weird light bulb that I think every coach out there can attest to. Like, once a student has participated in a tournament, they just get it. Like, they understand there's a totally different world out there that they maybe had some ideas about, but until they have watched other people in their same shoes do the thing, they don't really get the concept of it. And so that was one of the things I was going to ask is like, sure, like participation forensics is a, kind of irreplaceable place to learn. But when you're talking about learning debate, that's still kind of the same thing. Have you noticed that students are better performing once they've judged? I know that I felt like I was a better participant once I had been a judge. Do students seem to like get more out of judging?
I think so. I really do. I was really impressed when I really started assigning judging. It's usually like a participation sort of grade. Sure. Like I don't grade their ballots. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, this ballot is a C ballot. It doesn't make sense to me, right? But it's more of like, thank you for providing that feedback and everything like that. But just doing that, like you listen to their reasoning, and even if it's bad, like reasoning, they're kind of like, I really don't know. I'm just going to vote based on this one thing. And I'm like, you know what? At least they're kind of like challenging why they believe what they believe, which is one of the really big central parts of any debate class. Is like, you should really question how you know what you know. And hearing that like made me feel good that they're really sort of self-reflecting on their own beliefs and stuff.
And others, right? I mean, I think, we're talking about watching other people in your first year or first experience with debate. This class, this type of coursework, especially, uniquely kind of, everyone's doing it during coronavirus, but forcing yourself to record yourself, see yourself on these screens. These are practices that are like, pretty high level things to most people prior to this time, like to sit down and record yourself and criticize yourself and have someone look at you and tell you what they think you need to do. I mean, you're putting yourself on the line, right? I think this is and it's one thing when it's some anonymous judge at first, but it's really crazy when it's, Tim Seavey, the guy I see every day. Like, it's kind of like you bare your soul, right? So these practices, they transcend, online. They will, kids or people who are watching themselves and they, forcing yourself to like acknowledge that, like, oh man, I do this. I click my pen. I do this or that. Like, you have to see or have someone tell you. And even a coach, like, for whatever reason, they don't tell you. They want to be nice. They want to not. They didn't realize it. They have too much going on. Like, who knows what's going on? It's crazy to hear it from Tim. It's crazy to hear it from my fellow student. It's crazy to hear it from my teacher. So, getting as many eyes
yourself when you were looking at your own performance and your own speech, you pick stuff up that no one else would, right?
You are your own worst critic, right? We all are. I
give
think
you the capability to improve. I think you're your own best coach. Like, sure, it sounds rough when it's just the criticism, but like you are the greatest tool that you have to improve as well. And some of those things that only you knew that you were doing.
These are things, Jared, you were doing before coronavirus, and these are things you're going to continue after. I mean, right? That's
right. And you don't even have to use video necessarily in order to do the flipped class.
Yeah.
It's like we're just doing it now. It's like if you were just doing live streaming and no recording whatsoever, you could still have more debates during class time with a flipped class model, even without all of the recording and sharing files and stuff like that. All right. And so like the asynchronous debate, like increase that even more, you know what I mean? It's like, like, yeah, you could have more and more and more just experience debating on, and I think having different topics is important.
Sure.
So like seeing patterns in debate, it's really important for you to like have multiple topics and kind of go, oh man, the thing when we were talking about the death penalty, like there's also something that came up in the minimum wage debate, and like I could use that in both of them. You know what I mean? Even if it's just
the concepts, they put shape to the concepts. I mean, you learn 1,000 little things every time you do something. I mean, no matter how much you teach someone, you know, it's like my dad always talks about, like, I could teach you, I give you a book on how to tie your shoes, but like, it's just like you have to tie your shoes and you figure it out, kind of, you know what I mean? And you do need the concepts, but doing is not the same thing. I mean, so like, obviously, Jared, like, how often do you think, I mean, in the future, by allowing yourself to kind of do flipped class, especially using, you know, software where you kind of facilitate that, are you able to do more courses or more sections in a semester, if that makes sense?
Well, like for instance, I would skip some of the things that are a little bit more inside baseball when it comes to debate. You know what I mean? Like topicality, like kind of like people are like, what the hell is that? You know? And so I might even just sidestep that thing altogether. I'm like, I don't want to go down there. Let's just stick with, you know, reason and fallacies and stuff like that. But now I'm kind of like, you know what? I got a little, you know, the time has freed up. And not only that, but since they're doing more debates, some people need to know this for some of the debates that they're having. It could be really useful. And so now that's part of it. So I feel like some of those things that may seem really complicated to people that I would go, maybe this isn't a 100 level class. I'm like, oh, okay. There is room in a 100 level debate class for this now. So they actually get more content and more debates. It's just that you're using all of the time more efficiently. That's all it is. You know, you have so most colleges, they have this expectation of how much homework time you have to have in relation to how much class time you have, right? And so think about that. In class, you get this lecture and you go home and, I don't know, maybe do a writing assignment or something like that.
Yeah.
If that at-home time is like watching the lectures about these complicated debate theories, and then you come in and do it, that's just, I don't know. It just makes a way more sense.
It does make sense. Tim, I mean, I have a question for you. I mean, like, how often would you spend? Let me ask you this. You were a student not too long ago, like myself, not too long ago, but, you know, I don't feel, you know, as a student, there's an expectation that, like, I'm going to have to do some work, and doing work, it makes me proud when I accomplish that work, and doing a good job is like the goal. And, you know, being scared of assigning homework, how do you feel about from a student perspective of being encumbered with work to do at home?
I was intimidated when I wasn't able to do it with full knowledge, like this is the right path, right? Because the worst thing is you put a crap ton of work into this speech or like preparing for this debate, or, you know, whatever it is that you are putting your time into, or this paper, and then you get in there and realize like, oh, this is totally different direction and not at all what was asked, right? Like that's the worst. Or you feel like when you're preparing, you have to spend hours in lots of different directions because you're not certain of what avenue to go down. So it made it so much easier when I had the rare opportunities to get to do something more like a flipped classroom, where like I am collaborating with the teacher or with the professor or with the coach to be able to accomplish this. That sort of work, I think, is like the most valuable thing you can get at a, you know, not even collegiate setting, at any academic setting, is to get to actually produce something alongside the person that's teaching you how to produce it. And I thought that, like, I don't know, maybe you're a little bit like me, but like I didn't always do the reading and like the outside lecture work and the outside like understanding all the extraneous stuff, right? And sometimes I would need to rely on the lectures. So then, like, okay, now I sort of get the concept, but what a passive use of my time. So then it also ended up like I would learn and retain the most, like even if I did the reading, I would retain the most by participating in it. Like think of any class that had discussion, right? Like a classroom discussion, I think was far and away the most valuable tool for retention. So what is that difference like? I mean, for the students, Jared, I'm sure that you experience this still. For the students that don't watch the videos, right? Like the same as like people don't read the book. Well, watching a video and going through that text is a lot easier. But for the students that don't, how is their experience different in the classroom? Have you noticed?
So there's some students. Okay, I think there's at least two different categories. There's some students who just get it even without. I don't know. They like I don't know what it is about their personal history, but they get it, right? And then there's people that I'll put three categories. Then there's people that don't get it because they're not trying. Like you could tell that like all the sort of metrics on participation are really low for them, and then they come in and they're like, yeah, if you would have just covered the content. And then there's people who struggle. They watch the thing over and over again, and then they're still having trouble with it.
Do you find, Jared, that a lot of people aren't doing it, or do you find that most, if not all, the students are clicking through all the lessons?
And so it's really hard to say because I didn't know how many people were reading before. There was no way to measure.
That's no way. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
You know what I mean? It's like I don't know if anyone was doing the reading beforehand. I was guessing at who's.
I sure didn't.
Yeah, but I was guessing at who's doing the reading beforehand based off of their performance in class. But now I'm looking at it, I'm like, there's some people who perform really well and don't do any of the damn lessons. I'm like, I don't know, like how do they know this? You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like I envy them a little bit, but that happens in math too. That there's just people that are whiz at these things. They just have an aptitude for it. But those people that struggle with it, you see them processing it over and over again, and you see them applying it. I'm like, okay, that's really nice to see. You know what I mean? It's
development.
Really, yeah. Right? Yeah. You could see somebody developing over the course of 8 to 16 weeks, and even when they're struggling. And so, I mean, I've gotten direct feedback talking about the videos. They don't necessarily like the intro music, but besides that, we
trying to get it shorter. Well, what it is. And what? I know we have a couple minutes left. I wanted to kind of recap just a synopsis of like really what people don't necessarily know what our courses look like. We do have a full text option for every lesson that we do have also in video, so you can read if you want to read, and we also provide videos with essentially with the same content. So but
there's an area where I do get some pushback that like maybe you can elaborate. This is like a useful thing just because I want to hear. Some coaches, I mean, particularly like that do forensics as well, but like they also have argumentation, also have public speaking classes. They've got their own set of standards. Like they're like every school is different. I've got my own like model of teaching it.
Right.
Like it requires you have to have.
Can I field this for a second?
So, like, how does that happen then?
If you don't mind, like, so this was my biggest fear. I mean, this is what you're talking about. Everyone has their own little niche, right? Everyone has their own 2 cents and one spends it their own way. First of all, if you really get down to it, I think if you review our content, you will find that we cover the basic fundamental tenets of debate, which transcend all forms. And any sort of nuance that professors want to throw, do it. Like, that's not prevented by letting them know what a topicality is, and then you explaining your special nuance or whatever the situation is. Like, we want to quell, the purpose of this was to quell any fear of this concept and to explain kind of the advantages that Jared has namely seen and others like him.
There's some things that are just, that are pretty standard across. And even if you have a different way of explaining it, like there's some things where you're like, that's good. I kind of rather focus on something. And so it's really just sort of delegating what you're, like those lessons, and,
like a textbook, right? I mean, it's the same concept.
Yeah. But the thing, the awesome part is that now with all this online technology, you can have assessment tied to every lesson, and you could have, demonstrations and examples and things like that can measure their progress.
Yes.
And, so it's really awesome. I always had this vision of a textbook that as you're flipping through, there'd be like an example debate, and you could push and watch the example debate, and you're like, oh, that's awesome. Now I can see what it's like. Or that it would have like flow sheets from those example debates or something like that. That was, All right. So, it was Yeah, but the thing is, one of the daunting things about flipped class, and let's just take a couple extra minutes. One of the daunting things about flipped class models is that you have to record your lectures. You know what I mean? And so that is a little intimidating. And so, listen, I'm not trashing anybody, but when I was looking at that prospect, I'm kind of the procrastinator in me is looking at that. I'm like, man, I don't want to ever do that.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah,
it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, and just doing the same lecture that you've been doing is a really enticing. It does sound sexy just to keep doing what you're doing. But I made the plunge, and so this is kind of my way of sharing my process and outcomes with everybody. And so, yeah, if you're interested. That's the whole process. That's how I came to the flipped class model. That's how we're here today. And it's turned out to be pretty damn useful.
Yeah. If you have questions how to do it yourself, we'd love to help you. Yeah. And more, unfortunately for everyone else, we also are letting you know that, hey, we have a bunch of content for your coursework. If you'd like to check it out or have any questions, we'd love to hear your questions. So field us up at contact@protocommunications.
Yeah, protocommunications.com. Go check it out. You can contact you it's not hard to get a hold of people these days. All right. So, but
I'm
also,
right here.
Hey, go ahead and follow this. And when we're talking about this stuff, you could hop on and comment and stuff like that. Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. We're gonna end this up right here. We got Tim CV, Visolution, San Diego State University. Got Matt Shapiro, Esquire, and we got Jared Miller, your debate coach, communications.
My debate coach.
See you later.